Next thing is, how do you deal with questions that are unknown to you, right? So when I say unknown, as in to you on that D-Day, right? On that particular D-Day. Now, right now there are questions. So for instance, there was a question about multiculturalism. There is so many things that you could write about this, right? But at the same time, it need not be something that you have prepared or written an answer on it, right? So to you it might look like the answer is sort of how do I go about doing this thing. There was another question about, I believe, there was another question about recognition and deprivation, right? Recognition and deprivation. Now that is something that I'm sure that if you give it enough thought, you will be able to craft something along those lines. But under the time pressure, under the exam sort of stress, it might not click. So some of the pointers that we have for you is that try to focus on the keywords. Okay, so try to focus, let's say, on the keywords. So if the keyword is going to be a recognition, it's about tribal unrest, so tribe and unrest. Okay, distress. Okay, focus on the distress. So just try to see what are the kind of keywords that you will have from directly from the question itself. Okay, so those are the areas that you would probably want to highlight here. So how do you do? So take each and every one of the keywords there and try to brainstorm. Okay, how many points can you think about that particular section? Okay, maybe points can be like, let's say this is the first point, this is going to be my second point, this is going to be my third point. Even if it is not in this order, you try to create a sequence. Create a sequence. Okay, create a sequence. Okay, highlight what you want to highlight. You want to sort of prioritize what you want to prioritize, deprioritize some of the ideas that you probably do not want to do this. Second thing is that not only do you want to think about all the keywords in that particular question, that will help you sort of generate dimension. It will also probably help you create ideas one after the other, right? But try to also think about what exactly is that particular question going to be on your syllabus. Okay, and so that you already have a basic skeleton in your syllabus. Okay, you link it to that particular question, so you find the link. Okay, so you link this particular question, these kind of keywords, to this particular syllabus topic. So take this here, I'm going to link this here. This is also an important sort of an exercise, and that will help you sort of create some ideas, right? So on top of this thing, you've got your basic skeleton from that. Now just try to see if you can add some examples. If you have any some perspectives, examples, case studies, and so on and so forth. If you can, then great. I think you will have a very, very sort of a good answer, right? Now this could be in your 10 marker, it could be in your 10 15 20 markers, but it is 15 20 marker. There is an advantage here. In 15 20 markers, it is up to you to decide whether you want to attempt that question or not, right? So if there's a question where you feel very unsure of whether you're going and approaching it in the right sort of a way, whether you're going to hit the nail on its head or not, if that is a question that you're going to have, then better not to go for it if that option is still available to you. But when it comes to 10 markers, this is probably a good way to do it. Okay, you've got to write it. There's nothing you can do, but you've got to attempt that particular question. Even if it's a difficult sort of a question, trust me, it is going to be difficult for a good chunk of the competitors, right? So it doesn't necessarily matter. So try to see step number one, try to see what are the keywords in that particular question, try to see if you have any sort of ideas, anthropological relevance to those ideas. Okay, and then try to link it back to which part of the syllabus this kind of question can be linked to. If the question is about cup and chai, where would you sort of link it? Okay, where exactly would you link it to, right? Think about that. Okay, where exactly in the syllabus you put, and then try to focus on those sort of elements in that particular question. This will help you sort of create decide like what to keep from your brainstorming, right? So this is also an important sort of a tip that you could probably do. Okay, and also be ready for this. Okay, now I would also say that be ready for this. Okay, and I always say this, right? Let's expect the exam to not be very straightforward. Okay, there are very few exceptions. I believe 2021 last year was sort of an exception. Okay, in which I'm sure that many of you, if you've written the paper, or if you're like trying to ponder over that particular set of questions, now you will feel like it will be very difficult for you to choose which kind of a block of three to go, because there are many questions in which you would feel like you could do justice. There are many times you're not left with too much of choice. This is the one that you have to go with, and that's probably it, and so on and so forth. So you always think that be ready for some difficult questions. Okay, even if you're not able to sort of skip it. If it's the 15-20 marker, you might have the option to skip it. If it's a 10 marker, just be ready. Okay, but how do you go about doing this thing? Find the keywords. Okay, brainstorm and think about like any sort of anthropological relevance there. Okay, and try to see how you can link that particular question or that particular topic to the syllabus and try to interconnect between these. Okay, examples, case studies, anthropologists, these sort of things would probably help you sort of embellish the basic skeleton to add some tadka and all of that, right? So that is the next sort of a chunk that I would say. Okay, one of the points that was made, one of the questions that we found in last year's paper was caste and social capital. Okay, just try to see if you can just do a quick little practice of what we just talked about. So what are the kind of what are the keywords here? So one of the keyword is going to be your caste, and the second keyword is basically going to be your capital. What kind of capital are we talking about? We're talking about social capital. So generally in these kind of questions, I would say that if there is an if the question is going to be caste and social capital, it should be what is caste, okay, and then write about social capital. What exactly would that mean to you? Okay, now do not think that you will have a definition ready for all of these things. No, you will not be. Okay, and the next component or this next sort of a dimension is going to be, how does caste have social capital? Okay, how do you link it to social capital? Okay, and this third portion is going to be the major chunk of your answer. Okay, it should be a major chunk of your answer, right? Again, since you may not have seen such a question, just try to think like in with common sense, like, this is not something that I know, but I'm going to be able to craft something on this. But just think, how does caste act as social capital? You must have seen there are a lot of people who would never ever talk about their caste, possibly because regardless of how much they were able to achieve in society, okay, so when it comes to social mobility or caste mobility, they may have become an IAS officer, IPS officer, doctor, and so on and so forth, right? But still, they would probably not want their caste to be known because of obvious reasons. Okay, so you understand that, generally when you're from the lower down sort of caste, it becomes a nightmare to sort of face people and then try to explain your caste and where exactly it belongs, and also to show your merit, right, to a great extent. Okay, this is that is one thing, but at the same time you will see certain other groups of people who cannot stop talking about their caste, and that in that area is where you can take a look at it as social capital, right? So they, regardless if it is asked or not, to them, they will generally talk about, okay, this is my caste. Generally, those kind of caste members would probably be either in the social purity pollution, they might be higher, okay, Brahmin and so on and so forth, the local Brahmins of any sort of region. It could also be that it is part of the dominant caste. It could also be that they have a lot of political power. It could also be that there is a lot of economic power, or they have symbolic references, or they have symbols of that particular caste that is to be seen, possibly in movie industry, or actors or heroes, or politicians, and so on and so forth, right? So that is social capital. Now, using all this thing that is basically clicked immediately into your head, try to see if you can craft something, right? So try to see if you can craft something here. Whichever part of your syllabus you can connect it to, go ahead and sort of do this. Most important thing is that this has to be a question that has to be generated on the spot, and you will have to generate such answers in your exam as well, right? You will have to generate answers there as well. So you do not want to, so do not focus on, the lower caste members and the lack of social capital, right? That could be a dimension, but focus on how it adds a social capital. Okay, because in 10 marker, generally you will not have so much space. It becomes very, very difficult, right? And if you do focus on the lower caste and the lack of social capital, just try to keep it to like a paragraph or something. Okay, because I believe that there will be a lot to write either way. Okay, a lot to write the either way. Okay, it's an aspect that you can write about. You can write a paragraph on this thing, right? So for a lot of people, if they, even if they have achieved very high position, because of the lack of respect for that particular caste in that particular region, many members, even government servant members, do not want to sort of reveal their caste, okay, for obvious reasons. In their office, people might not respect them enough, and so on and so forth, right? So this thing happens even till today, right? Even till today, right? So this happens to a great extent. So but that is this kind of discrimination is there, whether it is government service, whether it is in any sort of profession, right? It still happens. That is our India, okay, and we study Indian society to a great extent. So we'll keep it realistic, okay? So you can talk about that, but just try to keep that to a paragraph. But talk about how certain castes have utilized that social capital, right? Ritual purity pollution, whether it's economic, whether it is political. Think about dominant caste and so on and so forth, right? Link it to caste mobility. Okay, M. Srinivas and his caste mobility, and so on and so forth. So 10 marker, it will be relatively easy, but this has to be something that you have to generate in that exam hall itself, right? It has to be generated in that exam hall itself. Okay.